autonomous vehicles. It used to be the most exciting, and now it's probably the most boring topic to cover in a panel because everybody's heard everything before. We're supposed to already have them. They keep taking longer. They're not here yet. So I'm going to start by, this panel is really about the future in which autonomous vehicles are here and what it will look like. But I think there's this complex problem around autonomous vehicles, which is they're kind of both here and not here. So I like to use this analogy of the Messiah. We are in the Holy Land, so I like talking about the Messiah in the Holy Land. And there's two perspectives on the Messiah. The Christian perspective on the Messiah, you can go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, and the view is that the Messiah has already come. The Messiah is already here. The Messiah is amongst us. And if you go to a mine or an Amazon warehouse or many other different locations, ports, closed environments, you'll see autonomous vehicles running today. And so we could talk to some extent about the autonomous vehicles that are already operational today. And then there's another sense, the Jewish perspective on the Messiah, which is that the Messiah is always going to be in the future, that we're always waiting. And there's another sense in which this transformation, this revolutionary future of the autonomous vehicle is something on the horizon, something magical but always distant, unapproachable. So that's a little bit of framing to start this panel. But when I mentioned this to Pierre, who's from Ledotech, this is Joachim from Valeo. Valeo is a tier 1 supplier, Ledotech's a LiDAR maker. Charlotte, who works at part of the Geely group at Zeekr under Seft, which is a Swedish autonomous vehicle shuttle maker car company thing. And then Alla from the Fifi group, which is a transit operator. So those are the panelists. When I spoke to Pierre about this idea, he said something like, it's DARPA's fault. What do you mean, Pierre?
Yeah, well, what I mean is actually, if you think of it, autonomous driving research has been going on for more than 50 years. So the technology has been continuously developed. But prior to Grand Challenge, nobody in general public wasn't aware of it. So it was
DARPA
academic.
was the gospel.
It created the awareness that the technology was there, but also it created the promise that it was going to happen very shortly, and that was going to be all-encompassing, that all vehicles would be autonomous. They all be basically what we call level 5. But that's not reality. That's why I say it's DARPA's fault.
Did it bring forward the autonomous vision? I mean, Charlotte, you're working with Waymo. That's one of your core partners. Waymo was born from the DARPA Grand Challenge. But by the way, for everybody who doesn't know, DARPA was a competition in 2008 run by the US government, so the research arm of the US military, which basically put all the famous names of autonomous vehicles and made them famous by competing to make, out of university teams, to make autonomous vehicles. And then basically Google scooped up all that talent and then created what was first Project Chauffeur and now Waymo.
I agree to what you're saying, that for many, many years it's been a technology topic. It's a difficult, complicated technology, needs a lot of research and needs a lot of development for sure. But to me, representing the business side and knowing that we are starting production real soon with real purpose-built cars for Waymo in the US, autonomous robotaxis, for sure seeing is believing. And the R for me is revenue and result. And what we see now is that operators are asking for this. There are a lot of drivers, and they're not drivers in vehicles. There are other drivers, like a taxi today in the Western world, in Europe for sure. The cost for running a taxi operation is more than 80% is salary for that driver. And as I know, we spoke outside, a driver that is not even there because he's doing something else today. So that will make this happen. But seeing is believing, and for sure we need to show results and have these vehicles on the streets. Not anymore the Gen 1 slow ones that will not give anyone, they are not super attractive and they are not super impressive, the slow early tests that we've been seeing so far. But if you go to Phoenix or if you go to somewhere in China, I know that you had some examples before, or even San Francisco, you will see that the robotaxis will bring you from where you are to where you want to go much faster. No need to queuing, looking for parking space, or even looking for your car keys that at least I usually don't find when I need them. So there are so many drivers into this. We cannot stop it. It's going to happen.
So Charlotte is saying that autonomous vehicles today are boring, but they're going to become exciting soon, and we need to make that happen. Joachim and I'm curious from both of you, when are autonomous vehicles going to become exciting and not just boring?
They are already exciting, and we see that already. And I totally agree with you. We are coming from the business side, and we see that this is happening. And from our case, we already implementing autonomous shuttles here in Israel, whether in defined areas or in public roads for public transportation. So this is happening. We need this as a solution, as one of the solutions. In our perspective, things should, progress, step by step. We need still the R&D. It's crucial, but the business side should lead the whole process and should lead the whole, implementation of autonomous, whether in defined areas or in public road. But we strongly believe it is happening. Our belief is to take it feature by feature. You still have a lot of barriers around there that we have to tackle, whether psychological barriers or other barriers that, one feature will bring down more obstacles and more, also gives the infrastructure to be ready to welcome the autonomous vehicles and the usage of those vehicles.
And maybe this is also, we had this discussion before about what kind of autonomous vehicle are we talking about, because usually all of us are on stage quite often discussing this, and we realize that audience does not even understand what we are talking about often when we mean fleet operations. Mas, please.
So give me a chance to answer. Because why should an AV not be boring? I want it to be boring. I don't want it to be exciting, because if I take a train, do I want to be excited? I want to be transported in safety, comfortably, and I don't really care so much personally as to who makes it and what sensors it uses or what means of propulsion. But there is a misconception, I think, out there, maybe created by the whole DARPA story, which got a lot of public attention.
I think this is unfair. Like, everybody agrees, even the people that think AVs can be exciting, that the drive should be boring, as in you shouldn't die while in the vehicle. But exciting means that, like, financial analysts get excited. That's a weird category of definition, but it means this technology scales very rapidly. The whole world has a cultural transformation. Like, the iPhone was exciting because then everybody got one, and then everything changed because of it. That's exciting. And that's not happening with AVs right now. AVs are boring.
Yeah, Olaf, that's a different story. And I'm looking at the audience here, and I don't know how many of you are financial analysts and want to be excited by that, and how many of you just need a mode of transport to get here. My experience this morning was terrible, right? And I would have liked it to be less exciting, in fact. Now, the misconception I'm talking about is that a lot of people, I think it was 5 years ago, that there was a survey done in the UK where 22% of people answered they could go into a dealership and buy a new car that will take them to the office while they read their newspaper. So there's a fundamental misconception about what an AV is about to the average person. And it's exactly not that. It's a means of transport, like a bus, like a taxi, like a train, and your personal vehicle, which you want to be exciting, reflecting what you're doing, is for a long time not going to be an AV, because an AV is something that does a perfect job without you. And therefore, it doesn't make sense that this thing that can do the shopping for you is sitting out there 95% of the time idle. That's a bad investment.
Look, I think you're right that there's the kind of there's only one AV that I personally really care about. I mentioned this kind of messianic framework of they're already and they're in the future, but I actually want the thing in the future to be which is that you have a fleet service of operated things. The thing that Zika is basically trying to make vehicles for Waymo to do, and I think maybe like one really juicy question to ask is like, are we going to get there? Like, we can talk about incremental deployments. We can talk about ADAS features in cars and how they are in fact rolling out, and mines and stuff like that. But are we going to have a scale business that replaces car ownership? That you don't need to drive through Tel Aviv, squished between two lanes of parked cars, but rather nobody needs to own a car and you can just use a ride-hailing service. Are we ever going to get there?
Yes. and I'm saying that with no shivering on my voice whatsoever. Also important to understand, though, is what needs to be in place to have these fleets of autonomous vehicles running. And one of them is to have purpose-built vehicles. It's not possible to scale just by retrofitting an autonomous driver, like a robo-driver on an existing car.
But isn't it the software that matters much more than a vehicle that's custom designed?
Both. It will for sure take two to tango. So even if the robo-driver is, of course, super, super important, it's the brain, the eyes, the ears of the vehicle, it's the driver. The vehicle in itself is tactile, so there will be tires feeling the road because the robo-driver may not be able to see all the time black ice or frost, but then the vehicle itself will react to what it feels on the ground and report to the driver. So it's an interaction. But I would say that this has also been part of the delay game in autonomous, that there are two very different industries that needs to be perfectly married. And the marriage needs to be about trust and long-term, for sure. It's like old school, good marriage we need between the software industry, the AD system developers, and the vehicle industry. And this has been taking time, but we are for sure there now. And vehicles, the real purpose-built, redundant, and fail operational vehicles will be there. The ones that the operators need, because they don't need the technology, they need uptime, they need a total cost of ownership that makes their business case fly. Then it will happen.
Yeah, so we've had Argo, which was one of the leading players in this field, fail. And there haven't been that many super high profile. I mean, there's a few of the AV trucking companies that are now imploding. But Cruise, which is, I'd say, like one of the top players with actual deployments, actual rides that you can take, they're burning like $1 billion, what's it, a quarter, on running the service. And Waymo's spending crazy money as well. How long can we not have this service before, you actually start running out of, like you start having companies failing and not being able to deliver? Because the hype back in 2015 through 2018 was in 2021, 22, you'd have actual deployments.
I just mentioned earlier, we don't want companies to fail, definitely not. In order to avoid that happening, we need, to see this is the end target, level 5, which is okay. We shouldn't go immediately or today or tomorrow to level 5, but it should be gradually going there. Like you mentioned, coming over to Tel Aviv, trust me, it's every day hectic with the traffic.
But so is your solution going to get us there?
It should get you there. If you push a button, the car knows the way, you can enjoy the ride. You don't need to be 100% focused. The car knows, the way it can drive autonomously. The minute you arrive here, if you have that feature of valet parking, the car can drop you off at the gate or at the entrance of this convention center. The car knows how to go there, find a place to park, whether indoor or outdoor. And when you need it, you use your iPhone and you call it, and it's there for you. So this is one side that features that has to be implemented in cars within the coming few years will take us to level 5, avoid companies from falling, and on top of that, from us, like as a public transportation operation, that we see, whether in Israel or worldwide, we are lack of drivers. And drivers, one of the solutions that we strongly push and believe that will make the whole operation efficient and cost-wise, end of the day profitable, because you can, whether it's a robotaxi or it's an autonomous shuttle, that if you take out the driver, then the autonomous shuttle bus can be driven the whole day, like 20 hours a day, more efficiently, more safely, and more friendly to the environment. So this is where we see things going, and this is where we strongly believe that.
I'm just gonna comment a little bit on that to say that yes.
I actually want to jump to Pierre and ask the question: if you look at DARPA, you can say one thing, it was negative because it created this hype, and the hype is unrealistic. But it also created all the investment and excitement and movement forward on AVs. and I'm sure your company to some extent rode that as well. How do you think if we zoom back into scale of like, maybe it will take a decade more to get to autonomous vehicles, maybe it will take 2 more years, who knows, maybe it will take 2 decades. Will it look like a blip in terms of the delay, in terms of the transformations that will come?
Well, certainly it is happening, and well, two things. First of all, well, innovation is never a monotonic function. It's it happens, and I think the blip or the haha moment happens when the solution overall is mature enough that it delivers real function or real value to the user at a economic price. You mentioned the iPhone. The iPhone is an interesting example because smartphones existed for 15 years prior to iPhone. What was the moment? The moment was this combination of good enough technology and providing real value at a economic model that people are willing to adopt. And I think that's where we're getting today. And that to Michael's, what's your name again?
Ala.
Sorry, I'm terrible with names. But once we start delivering real value in specific cases where you don't need $1 billion a quarter to babysit the solution, that's where the adoption will take place. And I think we're really on the cusp of that.
Can we please demystify the whole thing? You know, I mean, again, you also mentioned L5, you mentioned DARPA and the expectations created, but who says that all vehicles in the world have to be autonomous and they have to be level 5 so they can work everywhere, anytime, under all conditions? It just doesn't make sense. Right?
Arguably, no driver is level 5.
Is there a value as such in it? No. I think we just have to be much more pragmatic. On your Messiah story, we were saying as well, you know, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. It doesn't mean that all the cars will be AVs, but there are AVs already in operation as we speak. There is a growing number of use cases of AVs which do make business sense, and we will see them, and we'll see them unfold step by step. AVs as such, true driverless operation is level 4. And therefore, purpose-built vehicles help a great deal in making that happen. But even if then you say, oh, but it's only working in a mine, or it is only working in Guangzhou in China, is that a deficit? No. If there is a business case for that place in the world to run AVs, it will run AVs, and it's doing that. And there will be more and more places, more and more ODDs, operational design domains, where we will see level 4 operation. And only once we can say all level 4 ODDs are fully met, then somebody will be able to put an L5 sticker on it. That's a far way off. And personally, I don't care.
I think this is a little bit of an obfuscation on your part, though, because I think there's a meaningful difference. The industry settled on 2 terms. It's very weird because these terms are so silly in the first place. But it's basically decided L5 doesn't quite make sense, like you said. What we're actually aiming for is L4, which is something that allows the person who's in the vehicle not to be the operator, right? And that's where the business model transforms. Just let me finish, and then you can dissect.
Needed, okay?
And then L2 plus with lots of pluses, where it's like basically an autonomous, like it's a ADAS system that's gotten better and better, and you can hand over more to it, but it's basically you still are liable for if the car crashes. Like those are the 2 parts that are being discussed. Waymo and Cruise are the L4 category, and Mobileye is developing systems, and Tesla is developing systems that are in the plus category, L2 plus. And maybe they converge at some point, maybe they don't, but those are the 2 streams. And the L4 story is much more interesting in my mind than the L2 story.
But just to be clear, L5 means that it's a vehicle that can deal with anything you throw at it.
No, L5,
anytime, anywhere, any. That's L5.
Yeah, I'm talking about L4 though.
Exactly, and that's why L5
Brad Templeton's got the example of being on safari and chasing a leopard,
it's like
a leopard through
Messiah.
the bush. That's L5, right?
It's how I understand your Jewish Messiah analogy. Okay, so L5 might always be that step in the future because there's always some kind of snowstorm thing or whatever that the vehicle cannot deal with, but that maybe a human operator also would not deal with, right?
I'd like to bring us back to
pointless.
the question you had on cost and money before.
Exactly.
Is it worth it? For sure, yes. And people have been investing more money into other industries before. What is of importance when we talk about mass and the L4 deployment of fleets is that there will not be 300 brands. There will be only 3 per city or region. And this is a challenge and a race. Something that technology, OEMs, tier 1 suppliers of AD systems, and operators need to solve to win. So we're competing for fewer places.
Please,
okay.
The thing was called 360, and now we've almost exclusively spoken about commercial vehicles in terms of transport and A4 operation. And you just mentioned this story about L2 plus, 2.9, whatever it is. That's the POV, that's the privately owned vehicles. And that's the domain of ADAS. And I think that's the second stream that we're seeing. We see this purpose-built L4 transportation as a service. And from a private point of view, the majority will stay at this ADAS level because from a liability point of view, then this allows the whole system to be much cheaper, much more affordable. But I want to be clear that there are as well level 4 use cases for privately owned vehicles. You mentioned parking, valet parking a few minutes ago. That's a different technical solution. Technically, they're categorized both as L4, but what you need in the car is different. And therefore, let's not confuse the two things when we say AV.
Okay, so it seems like in general the word AV needs to be disambiguated. We need to clarify. I guess the term AV360, as you're suggesting, is there's an agglomeration of different use cases in which it might be deployed. Narrow use cases, L4, parking. I do still think that the transformative, the iPhone moment, is something much more like a Waymo deploying, maybe just in one city, but with the ability to scale really rapidly. But yeah.
Well,
Do you have a final thought?
Yeah, to me it's both because think of if you look at and you used like Tesla or Mobileye as examples, there's strong evidence that there's privately owned vehicle purchasers want this technology, so they want some of these features you mentioned, like valet parking is one, like traffic jam pilot, whatever, and that these create real value as well. So once again, it's not one size fits all. The two streams will continue for quite a long time. They may converge into one solution in distant future, but I think this is decades before we get to that point.
I would like to have a last word on that because I think we always end up in a techie discussion. It's always R&D engineers wanting to have cool features with their vehicles. I'm here to say I want to sell less vehicles, and this is the true challenge. To tell that to an OEM, to an automotive company, we're going to sell less vehicles now, but the aftermarket, the service and repair industry that will come with a 22-hour operation a day, 24/7 deployment of these vehicles. That is the disruptive new business we're going to enter into. And insurance companies need to follow, because how do you insure a robot?
On that note,
Driving on a street.
I'm going to conclude. We are a little over time. And I think this highlights how AVs are also like religion in that it's very hard to agree, it's really hard to have consensus, and there is always a sense of mystery. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day.